Forest of Death, training ground 15 years after the Kyubai's rampage. During the Chunin exams Team 7, one of the youngest squads aiming to rise to Chunin, had just been crushed by the devastating assault of a mysterious woman representing grass. Everything they tried had been countered effortlessly, every tactic dismantled, and every jutsu turned back at them with merciless precision. The intruder's serpentine techniques had revealed the truth. This wasn't some random opponent. It was none other than Orochimaru, the infamous Snake Sannin. One of the third Hokage students, the genius responsible for many strategies now taught to genin, and a shinobi feared across the nations. Naruto had stepped forward, throwing himself into the fight in an attempt to buy time for Sasuke and Sakura to retreat. But the gamble had failed horribly. His teammates had ignored his warning to escape, and Orochimaru had effortlessly suppressed him with a strange seal, an additional layer over the one holding back the Kyuubi. Stripped of his strength, the boy had been struck down. Now, he plummeted from the towering branches of the forest. Blood loss blurred his vision as he tumbled through a crevice at the base of a massive tree. His final thought before darkness took him was bitter. Why did I even try? Letting Orochimaru finish whatever he wanted would have been smarter. Then maybe I could have gotten my team away when that lunatic left. Well, it doesn't matter now. I won't be around to regret it. Unknown realm. When Naruto's eyes opened again, he was greeted not by the forest, but by a bizarre landscape. A pale, skeletal plateau stretched beneath him, with water spilling endlessly from its edges. Above, the sky churned with crimson clouds, bleeding rain while bolts of black lightning split the heavens. And in front of him stood a figure. The man was tall, with slicked-back silver hair and a presence that radiated pride. He wore a long blue coat with 3 tails, its surface marked with a serpent-like pattern along one side. Beneath it was a dark vest and trousers, paired with sturdy brown boots. His icy blue eyes mirrored Naruto's own when enraged. At his side rested a sheathed akatana, its scabbard black with a golden ribbon tied near the top, the hilt wrapped in pristine white silk crisscrossed with black, engraved with designs that exuded elegance and lethal precision. The stranger's very posture carried the weight of nobility and authority. His voice cut the silence, deep and disdainful. So this is what my reincarnation looks like. I expected more. Naruto twitched angrily, snapping back with his usual lack of filter. What the hell are you even talking about? Reincarnation? Don't mess with me, that's just nonsense. Everybody knows it's a fairy tale. The silver-haired man's gaze darkened. He allowed his blade to slip just slightly from its sheath, the sound alone radiating menace. Silence! If you wish to keep what little remains of your life, you will hold your tongue and listen. I will not repeat myself. Do you understand? Naruto swallowed hard and gave a quick nod. Satisfied, the man continued. Good, at least you aren't entirely brainless. As you've probably realized, you stand at the threshold between life and death. This time, unlike before, the fox cannot intervene. Our souls were destined to merge when you were 4 years old, though I had no choice then. But now I do. If you want my power, there are conditions. First, you must abandon your mask. Stop imitating my fool of a brother, Dante, and become who my successor should truly be. Naruto's expression shifted instantly. The childish grin and reckless demeanor melted away, replaced by a sharp, calculating gaze. His voice lowered, cold and cautious. How could you see through me? I thought no one knew. Not even the Hokage could tell. A humorless chuckle escaped the man. I am you, your former life, every secret, every thought you cannot hide from me. Second, you will climb higher than anyone else. You will become the strongest existence in this world. Lastly, you will take up my name, Virgil Sparta. To your enemies, you will be the demon they dread more than the wrath of the heavens. To your allies, you will be the guardian angel they trust their lives with. The words struck Naruto like fire. Inspiration welled up inside him, not realizing that Virgil had long prepared such a speech to ensure his compliance. With determination burning in his eyes, Naruto accepted. Their souls began to intertwine, Virgil explaining as it happened. The boy would inherit all of his former strength, his knowledge, and more. What thrilled Naruto most wasn't just the newfound bloodline, but the Darkslayer style, an art of unmatched speed and power. Before he could ask how long the process would take, the strange world crumbled and Virgil vanished. Darkness reclaimed him. Tenmi no Gyuri when Naruto awoke, Or rather, when Virgil did, he stood before an all too familiar structure, the demonic tower. Memories that weren't his own whispered to him, reminding him that his past incarnation had once sought to use this place to breach the demon world and claim Sparta's power. Looking into a nearby pool of water, he saw not his old reflection but the sharp, silver-haired face of Virgil himself. Taller now, nearly 5'8", he had become the very image of his predecessor. Before he could dwell on the change, a swarm of skeletal figures appeared, hell prides, draped in black and wielding scythes. Virgil smirked faintly, his calm tone hiding a flicker of excitement. Hell prides, at the very least, you'll serve as an adequate warm-up. He moved with ruthless precision. A slash here, a judgment cut there, a blur of movement followed by a decisive strike. Within moments, the creatures were nothing but dust. Virgil scoffed at the ease. Pathetic, if this tower has nothing better, I'll die of boredom. Approaching the looming gates of the tower, he casually shredded the doors apart with his blade. Inside lay a chamber of ice, and at its heart slumbered a massive, three-headed hound sheathed in frost. The beast stirred as Yamato's strike shattered its icy shell, its body marked with countless cuts. With a roar, it glared down at him. "You insolent wretch, you dare interrupt my slumber, I'll tear you apart." Virgil's expression didn't waver. "You're in my way, disappear." In a flash, he vanished from sight and reappeared behind the beast. As his sword slid into its sheath, the hound's eyes widened. "That technique, that scent. You're one of Sparta's lineage. Another of that traitor's spawn. Very well. Fate demands I lend my power once more. Wield me properly, or I will end you." The hound dissolved into a glowing orb, which reshaped into a trisection staff radiating icy energy. Memories of Dante wielding it flooded his mind. Virgil raised a brow, murmuring, "Impressive, Cerberus. But a weapon like this doesn't suit me. Instead, grant me ice itself, shaped into a taijutsu form." The weapon vanished, its essence flowing into him. Frost trailed his fists and kicks as he tested the new art, shards of ice erupting at his command. Satisfied, he pressed deeper into the tower. Upper levels, chamber of wind and fire guardians. 30 minutes later, Virgil entered a hall where two massive statues stood. As he approached, they sprang to life, bickering endlessly. One was blue, armored with bronze, wielding a blade crowned with a shrunken head. The other mirrored him in red. Their constant chatter tested Virgil's patience. With an irritated glare, he slammed his fist into the ground, unleashing a surge of frost that encased both in glaciers. Without hesitation, he shattered them to pieces, leaving only their swords intact. The blades themselves spoke, offering loyalty. Virgil agreed, molding their essence into enhancements for his martial style, granting him mastery over fire and wind. Testing his new arsenal against a fresh wave of hellspawn, he continued forward. Chamber of the Lightning Witch, 1 hour later reaching the next floor took longer. Along the way, Virgil had been swallowed whole by a massive demonic whale. He carved his way through its innards, slaying thousands of hell envies, skeletal corpses wielding scythes, before obliterating the beast from within. At last, he reached the chamber of the next guardian. When he entered the chamber, the air stirred as a storm of bats erupted, filling the space in chaotic flutters. The room itself carried an uncanny resemblance to the interior of a lavish brothel, lined with crimson fabric and shadows that hinted at something intimate yet sinister. As the swarm dispersed, his gaze landed on a figure reclining casually on the crimson-draped bed. Although part of him expected such a sight, he still found himself faintly surprised. The figure stretched to nearly 6 feet in height, with long, flowing blood-red hair reaching down her back. Her skin gleamed unnaturally pale under the dim light, and her piercing eyes shone the same vivid shade as her hair. Her attire, if it could even be called that, was barely present. But what caught his attention most of all was the obvious fact: the figure was a woman. The reasons for his certainty were twofold. First, the creator of the sexy no jutsu had long since developed a sharp instinct for recognizing women, an instinct that bafflingly failed him whenever Sakura was involved. Second, this particular woman was topless, her hair acting as the only curtain for her chest. Even so, he could swear he glimpsed more than she intended to conceal. The woman, radiating an aura that marked her as something demonic, likely a succubus, rose gracefully from the bed. Each step she took seemed deliberately sensual, her crimson eyes drinking him in with a hunger that made his skin crawl. He resisted the urge to shiver. So this is what women like Anko or Kurenai must endure during missions or while walking the streets. If that's true, I owe them greater credit than I ever gave, for not slaughtering every man who looked at them like this. The succubus spoke, her voice soft, melodic, and thick with allure. Well, well, what do we have here? Such a handsome face. It has been far too long since I've seen one like yours. I take it this is your first time. Virgil felt the weight of lust dripping from her tone and muttered under his breath with dry humor, without a doubt, a succubus. Damn it, if only those villagers had let go of their hatred toward the Kyuubi. If they had treated the Jinchuriki as a person rather than a demon's vessel, I would have had the resilience to withstand this kind of temptation. But no, they feared stability, claiming it would lead to destruction. Fools, now I'm left to endure this alone. Lost in his thoughts, he failed to notice how close she had drawn until her delicate fingers brushed against his cheek, sliding down toward less innocent places. Snapping back to focus, he spoke with a tone as cold as steel. I have no time for this. I must return to the surface to complete what I began, perhaps another time. She laughed, light and wicked. Are you certain? I could offer you pleasures that would make you forget every burden weighing on you. You may never wish to leave once you've had me. So tell me, handsome, why not surrender to me? For a moment, his will faltered. Then, with a flicker of movement, he vanished from her touch, reappearing beyond her reach. Standing tall, he drew upon Agni and Rudra's power, his stance sharp with intent. His voice was laced with ice. I refuse. And should you stand in my way, I'll cut you down as I have all who came before you. The succubus only smiled wider before summoning her power. Bats infused with crackling lightning swarmed toward him. Virgil slipped through the attacks with practiced ease, teleporting in front of her and striking with precise, brutal combos that shattered her defenses. Nevin, as he would come to know her, escaped to an alcove, conjuring another wave of electrified bats. Again he danced around the attacks, closing the gap, this time unleashing Cerberus's frost to freeze her movements, striking with merciless efficiency. Their battle unfolded in rhythm. She attacked with swarms and tricks, and he responded with cold precision, cutting through her with effortless grace. After several exchanges, she altered her strategy. Teleporting to the chamber's center, she shrank to his size and charged forward, arms open as if to embrace him. Instinct screamed danger, and in an instant he activated his devil trigger, his demonic form bursting forth. With devastating power, he countered, the blow forcing her to her knees. Before her head struck the hard stone floor, Virgil caught her gently. Without her bats to shield her, she looked fragile. Opening her eyes, she found his gaze thoughtful as though weighing possibilities. She sighed, resigned. So this is it. You'll leave me here just as Virgil Sparta once did. A pity, you might have been my only chance at freedom. To her surprise, he chuckled. And who said I'd abandon you? If my predecessor's memories serve me, your true form is that of a guitar. While your style may not fit with Darkslayer, I do happen to know how to play. If you wish, I'll wield you as my weapon, and when you desire, you can walk the world in your own form. What do you say? Her answer came without hesitation. She transformed instantly, tears of joy glimmering as her body shifted into a weapon, a purple electric guitar with strings of living lightning, capable of reshaping itself into a scythe. Testing its chords, Virgil gave a satisfied nod, allowing Nevin to rest within his mindscape as he pressed onward. Chamber of the Guardian of Light. 30 minutes later, Virgil disembarked from the monorail, stepping into another ominously familiar place, the cavernous lair of Beowolf. The hulking, winged demon wasted no time, dropping from the ceiling with lethal intent. Fortunately, Virgil's instincts warned him in time, and he moved aside as the beast's massive bulk slammed into the ground. One glance confirmed Beowulf's lingering injury, his eye still ruined from Dante's earlier battle. The demon sniffed the air, growling in a thunderous voice. I smell you, spawn of Sparta. At last, I will have vengeance for the sins of your bloodline. His wings spread wide as he roared, radiating power. Virgil, unimpressed, unleashed the final form of Judgment Cut, the very technique he once wielded against Dante in their fateful duel before becoming Nilo Angelo. The strike was absolute. Beowulf was torn apart, reduced to nothing more than a heap of shredded flesh. From the remains emerged a glowing orb, merging into Virgil's body. In its place materialized silver gauntlets and boots, laced with radiant energy. Testing them, he discovered Beowolf's techniques at his disposal, and more, these new powers amplified the elemental abilities of Cerberus, Agni, and Rudra. Leaving the chamber with his new arsenal, a smirk crept across his face. With so much power at his command, ruling the world, or perhaps building a harem of devoted followers, seemed less like fantasy and more like inevitability. But first, he had to conquer the tower. Chamber of Inner Darkness. 20 minutes later, after tearing through puzzles and obstacles with casual destruction, Virgil entered a vast, circular chamber. The walls were lined with inactive stage lights, and at the center stood a strange mirror inscribed with words. "Look within me and face your greatest trial. Lose, and you shall forever be one with my legion of shadows." As he finished reading, his own shadow pulled itself from the floor, reshaping until it mirrored him. Except this version resembled what he might have been had he been Dante's reincarnation, only forged entirely from darkness. Virgil raised an eyebrow. "I take it you're my trial." The doppelganger smirked with Dante's cocky tone. "That's right. After all, what's a Virgil without testing himself against Dante at least once? Wouldn't be fitting otherwise." Virgil chuckled lightly, unsheathing Yamato. "You're right. Let's begin, brother." The doppelganger charged with reckless speed, forcing Virgil to evade. His counterattacks passed through the shadow as if it were untouchable. Frustration built until Nevan's whisper revealed its weakness. Taking her guidance, he wove hand signs and summoned shadow clones. Together, they activated all the stage lights, flooding the room with blinding brilliance. The copy froze, its form unraveling into something like a mannequin. With the opening created, Virgil and his clones executed judgment cut in perfect unison, shattering the shadow entirely. From its remains emerged an orb of darkness, merging into him. He realized with satisfaction that his clones now shared his durability, able to endure and transfer experiences as if they were extensions of himself. The once blonde warrior pressed onward, climbing steadily to the summit of the tower. Each step carried the weight of anticipation, for he knew instinctively what awaited him above. The doppelganger had fallen far too easily, and battles of this scale never ended without a final confrontation. He was certain that one last opponent stood in his path. Tenminuguri. 10 minutes later, Virgil reached the highest point of the structure and was met not with an adversary, but a swirling portal that pulsed ominously. With no other route available, he strode forward without hesitation, letting the strange energy swallow him. The other side was unlike anything he had seen before, a translucent, water-like expanse, thick and gelatinous, with a grotesque form pulsing at its center. The hideous mass shifted, its distorted face turning toward him. From within the bubbling flesh came a warped, gurgling voice. "I sense you, child of Sparta. When I destroy you, I will reclaim my original body and escape this prison. Ready yourself, for this will not be an easy battle." Virgil smirked, answering not with words but with action. His hands formed the signs for a jutsu that had become second nature, shadow clone jutsu. A puff of smoke engulfed the chamber, and when it cleared, 100 identical figures of the silver-haired swordsmen surrounded the abomination. In perfect unison, they spoke. "Are you so certain of that?" All at once the copies vanished in blurs of motion, reappearing around the monstrous blob with air trick, their blades striking in relentless succession. In moments, the assault was complete. The clones vanished, leaving only the true Virgil standing calmly, Yamato sliding into its sheath. The final click of the scabbard echoed, and the creature erupted. The malformed body detonated into a shower of slime, violet ichor, and raw demonic power. As the chaos subsided, a weapon emerged from the remains, a greatsword, its blade shining silver, its hilt twisted like a spine, ending in a skull pommel. The legendary force edge drifted into Virgil's hand. After testing its weight with a few arcs through the air, another portal materialized, pulling him back into the human realm. On the other side, he found himself overlooking a clearing, and what he saw filled him with fury. Below, 2 of the 3 Iwa Genin squads knelt before Orochimaru, pledging their allegiance to his invasion plans. Yet it wasn't their betrayal that made Naruto's blood boil. At Orochimaru's feet lay Anko, stripped bare and bound, a pawn in his twisted scheme to solidify Iwa's loyalty. The sight tore at him, but he restrained his urge to rush in. Though his power had multiplied tenfold, he knew the snake Sannin's experience still gave him the edge. A direct clash now would be reckless. His mind calculated the difference. It would take a month before he could dismantle Orochimaru as easily as he had the tower's guardians. So he waited. Only when Orochimaru departed did he make his move. The moment the traitor's presence faded, the Iwa Genin closed in on their reward. The first boy never even touched her. Blood spurted from his mouth as he fell lifeless, organs crushed from within. The remaining 5 immediately formed a defensive circle. Virgil chuckled darkly. "Really? Could you make this any easier for me?" A flick of his wrist ended them. Judgment cut carved the air, and their bodies collapsed into piles of shredded flesh and shattered bone. Approaching Anko, Virgil noticed the cursed seal on her shoulder glowing a harsh crimson, agony etched across her restrained body. His eyes narrowed in recognition. How in all the blood-soaked hells did Orochimaru learn to mimic demonic mate seals? Meanwhile, far away, Orochimaru suddenly froze mid-sentence with his sound genin, an irrational urge to scream tearing through him. "Damn you!" Back at Anko's side, Virgil recalled what he knew. Such seals could only be broken in 2 ways. 1, kill the caster. But if the seal had already activated, the victim would continue to suffer even after the originator's death. That left only the second method. A demon of higher standing had to override it by claiming the victim as their mate. Virgil clicked his tongue. "Perfect. Let's hope she thanks me for this later." He sank his teeth into her shoulder, inscribing his own mark. Darkness surged through his mind, pulling him under. Within the mindscape, Naruto opened his eyes to a twisted nightmare. Snakes writhed around Anko, violating her, while a demonic, serpent-like Orochimaru watched with sadistic laughter. Rage boiled within him, and he slipped into what he dubbed Virgil mode, a state of godlike precision and wrath. Blades flashed, severing the snakes in mere moments. He turned, placing himself between Anko and the monster's fragment, eyes cold and merciless. The apparition sneered, though its words were directed at Anko. "Do you truly believe this fool can save you? I'll tear him apart before your eyes, then break you beyond repair." Anko's tear-filled gaze met Virgil's, her voice trembling. "Please leave, you can't defeat him. I'd rather suffer than watch someone pure die for me." Virgil chuckled, his tone sharp as steel. "I appreciate your concern, but several things bind me here. First, your gift of soul sight. Few possess it, only fallen angels and their descendants. Second, this monster has been defiling you, and I despise such acts. Third, he dared to threaten me. Fourth, our paths have crossed before, and I never allow more than 3 encounters. And finally, he is a coward who hides behind stolen forms." The fragment hissed, enraged. "Say that again." "You deaf!" Virgil's voice was glacial. "You're a coward, prove me wrong." Screaming, the Orochimaru shade lunged with the grass cutter, but he never stood a chance. Virgil sidestepped at the last instant, Yamato flashing. In a blur, both arms were severed, followed by his head. 3 fountains of blood spurted before the fragment dissolved into nothing. Turning back, Virgil knelt before the weeping Anko. His voice softened, though authority rang within it. "Rest now. That monster won't torment you again. When you awaken, seek me." And with that, he faded from her mindscape. Reality returning to consciousness, Virgil immediately summoned upgraded shadow clones, ensuring Anko's protection. She might have become his mate unexpectedly, but his pride as a half-demon demanded nothing less than safeguarding her completely. Leaving her under their watch, he set out toward the presence of his teammates. 30 minutes later on his path, he cut through packs of lesser demons, honing both familiar and newly acquired techniques. Arriving at the scene of his comrades, he witnessed Sasuke poised to slaughter a sound genin, his curse mark twisting his soul. Knowing such an act would damn the Uchiha's spirit forever, Virgil intervened, obliterating the entire sound team in an instant. Teams 9, 10, and the surviving members of Team 7 could only stare in shock. 3 enemies reduced to gore before their eyes. Their disbelief only grew as a figure with regal bearing descended silently from the trees. Sasuke, sharing and whirling, stammered the name in disbelief. "Naruto, is that really you?" Virgil smirked inwardly at their stunned reactions. Team 10's responses varied. Ino wavered between gawking at his appearance and denying what she saw. Shikamaru froze in shock before deciding it was too troublesome to dwell on. Choji simply thought he looked like a complete badass. Team 9 was a scene in itself. Lee was sprawled out cold, completely unaware of everything going on around him. Neji wore his usual mask of disinterest, looking as if someone had jammed a steel rod permanently into his spine. Meanwhile, Tenten's eyes glittered with excitement as she practically drooled over Yamato's weaponry, caught up in her typical obsession. Team 7 wasn't much better. Sakura sat stiffly, clinging desperately to denial, refusing to admit to herself that Naruto now had an appearance that made Sasuke pale in comparison. Speaking of Sasuke, his reaction was priceless. His expression looked like he had swallowed something sour while also dealing with constipation. Still, all he did was grunt out a dismissive, "Chen," before finally voicing the question everyone wanted answered. "So, what's with the new look, Dobi?" Naruto paused briefly, considering how much he could say before replying evenly. "All I can tell you is that it's tied to a bloodline. Anything more than that has to go through the Hokage first, so I know what I'm cleared to reveal without endangering Konoha." His response didn't sit well with the group, who clearly wanted more details. Still, none of them pressed the matter further. Instead, Virgil strode toward one of the dismembered heaps left on the ground and casually plucked the Heaven Scroll from the remains. Without concern, he flicked the blood off and addressed his team in a calm, detached tone. "We've got what we came for. Let's move to the tower." Before objections could even be raised, Naruto had already started toward the massive building at the heart of the forest. Left with no choice, the others broke into a sprint to follow him. Yet no matter how fast they ran, they couldn't seem to catch him, even while pushing themselves to full speed. Shikamaru summarized the situation in his usual deadpan. "Troublesome." One day later, the tower at Training Ground 44 Team 7 ended up inside a deserted classroom. A small message scribbled across the blackboard instructed them to open their scrolls. As soon as they did, Uruka appeared in a flash of reverse summoning. He congratulated them for clearing the second test before nervously ushering Naruto to the Hokage, where the boy would finally learn what information about his bloodline could be disclosed. Temporary Hokage's office, tower at Training Ground 44, 30 minutes later. Naruto gave the old man a precise, yet thorough rundown of everything that had occurred in the forest. Afterward, he began explaining the nature of his new bloodline. It wasn't just one ability, but multiple aspects woven together, each of them startling in its own right. The first aspect amplified his body. His physical strength and speed received an enormous boost. Any training he undertook would produce extreme gains. At present, he was already operating at a Chunin's physical level, but if he trained relentlessly for just a month, his raw power could surpass even Tsunade's monstrous strength, and that was before layering chakra enhancements. The second aspect sharpened his mind. He now had a flawless, photographic memory. With it, he could recall anything instantly and perfectly. If he sent shadow clones to comb through Konoha's archives, he could theoretically amass knowledge on almost everything in existence. The third aspect was linked to his very soul. It granted him access to the legendary Devil Trigger transformation known to the descendants of Sparta. At the moment, he could tap into several tiers of this power, though he primarily relied on his Level 2, often referred to as the Vergil DT, as his standard form. The final aspect tied everything together, and it was arguably the most terrifying. This part enabled him to absorb the souls, memories, and abilities of the demons he defeated. The Hokage immediately classified everything beyond the second ability as an S-rank secret, restricting it from general knowledge. With that decree given, Naruto was dismissed. Team 7's temporary quarters, the tower after leaving the Hokage, Naruto returned to his team's lodging. Since it would be a while before the other squads finished, he decided he'd eat later. Right now, a shower was more appealing. He stripped off his dirty clothes, tossing them into one of the laundry baskets provided. Noticing Sasuke's garments in a nearby basket, he muttered internally, "So, he and Sakura have been wondering where I disappeared to, huh?" A smirk tugged at his lips. "If the emo bastard tries anything, I'll just deck him." With that thought, Naruto walked toward the shower stalls. It's not like he could ever, his brain completely short-circuited at what he saw. There, standing under the water with eyes closed and humming softly, was Sasuke. That in itself wasn't strange. What stopped Naruto cold was the unmistakable sight of Sasuke's chest, not flat and masculine, but developing round breasts, small yet firm. Against his better judgment, Naruto's eyes traveled lower, confirming what his mind refused to believe. There was no male anatomy at all. The realization hit like a hammer. Sasuke wasn't a boy. Sasuke was a girl. Memories of perverts being brutalized flashed through Naruto's mind, and he knew the situation spelled disaster. Still, if he was going to meet his end, he might as well embrace it with a grin. Adopting a mischievous smirk, he teased. Well, Sasuke, he drawled with mock admiration. Those are some impressive breasts you've got there. Didn't know guys could grow those. So, when do mine come in? Sasuke froze, eyes snapping open in horror. For years she had managed to guard this secret. She had dodged swimming classes at the academy by faking illness. She had avoided group baths, always careful to stay dry and covered. She had even mastered a voice-altering technique from the Uchiha library to maintain the facade. Everything had gone flawlessly, until now. Today, she'd decided to relax. Telling Sakura she'd meet her later at the mess hall, she slipped in when she thought the place was empty. She hadn't noticed Naruto's arrival, and now here he was, staring at her with that damn smirk. Worse still, his shirtless body was lean and sculpted, showcasing a six-pack that was on the verge of becoming an eight-pack. His form radiated strength. When her gaze involuntarily trailed lower, her face flared crimson at the sight of what Naruto was hiding. One word blared in her head, big, but the full weight of what just happened finally hit her. Trembling with rage and embarrassment, her voice cracked slightly higher than the tone Naruto was used to. "Nar you too," he shut his eyes. Pain followed instantly. Later, both sat in tense silence on separate cots. Neither spoke, each stealing glances at the other. Sasuke hadn't bothered rewrapping her chest, her shirt stretched tightly across her exposed form. She was at a loss. She had never thought this secret would be exposed, especially not to Naruto, a boy who had become both rival and strange sort of friend. How could she explain this? Naruto, meanwhile, was replaying every sign he had missed. All those years of odd excuses, the skipped baths, the faked illnesses. How had no one connected the dots? He sighed, running through possible ways to handle the revelation. Finally, he broke the silence with a half-hearted grin. "So, how long have you been a girl?" Sasuke deadpanned, sarcasm dripping. "Since the day I was born." Naruto twitched in irritation. "Hey, I'm just trying to process all this. Maybe if you didn't ask dumb questions, it wouldn't be so hard," she snapped back. Naruto almost argued, then realized she wasn't wrong. Dropping it, he rephrased his question. "Fine, then why hide it? Why pretend to be a guy all this time?" Her expression turned serious. Instead of answering directly, she countered. "Tell me, Naruto, what do you think happens when an entire clan is wiped out and only one girl is left to restore it?" Naruto thought for a moment before replying bluntly. "My guess, they'd treat you like breeding stock. Pair you off with powerful men again and again until you gave birth to a male heir. Am I right?" Her silence and small nod confirmed it. For a moment, Sasuke was stunned. The old Naruto would have needed hours of explanation. This new Naruto, however, pieced it together almost instantly. His insight left her quietly impressed and a little unsettled. A faint smirk, one that carried no true joy, touched Sasuke's lips. "You're right, Naruto. If my secret had been revealed the moment I reached the age where I could bear children, they would have chosen a powerful shinobi to father a child with me. That way the clan's bloodline would be preserved, and a male successor could be born. After that, who knows what would have become of me once an heir existed. The Sandaime, however, didn't let such a fate fall on me. He went so far as to forge documents that declared I had been born a son rather than a daughter. With the rest of my clan slaughtered, there was no one left who could expose the truth. The only exception was the one responsible, but as a missing nin, he could never get close enough to speak of it." Naruto gave a slow nod, processing her words before shifting the subject to something she hadn't expected. "So then, what's your real name?" Her brows furrowed, clearly caught off guard. "What?" Naruto exhaled heavily. "I asked what your actual name is. What were you called before you started living as Sasuke?" She hesitated, torn between keeping silent and giving in. Could she entrust this to him? He already knew more about her life than anyone else did, while she still remained mostly in the dark about him. Perhaps she could bargain. Her eyes narrowed slightly. How about this, we trade? I'll keep telling you about myself, but in return you answer anything I ask about you, including your Kekkei Genkai. Deal, Naruto shrugged, almost casual. Sure, I've got no reason to hold back. Besides, the Sandaime only warned me not to reveal the part about demons and the devil trigger. He never said I couldn't talk about other things. So, tell me, what's your real name? Her lips curved faintly. Suki Achiha. Naruto's grin widened as he stood from his bed, moving over to her and holding out his hand. She blinked, unsure. What's that for? He chuckled. When two people meet for the first time, they shake hands. Her brows knit together. But we've already met. Naruto wagged a finger with mock seriousness. Not quite, Suki. Up until now, I only knew Sasuke Uchiha. Today, I'm meeting Suki Achiha. His grin softened. You're letting me see behind the mask. Before, I only knew the facade you wore. Now, I get to learn about the real you. Hopefully, you're not as uptight as Sasuke always is. A faint blush spread across her cheeks at his words. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Yet, despite his teasing tone, there was a strange warmth in his voice, trust. That was something she had always admired about Naruto. For the first time since the massacre, someone knew the truth about her. Maybe someday, she could let the Sasuke identity vanish. For now, though, it still had to remain. Still, she didn't appreciate his last jab. She scowled. Better uptight than the class clown, Dobi. Naruto's expression darkened, their fleeting moment broken. Team. Her reply, however, came with a genuine smile, one so real it actually made him blush. And then, barely audible, she whispered, "Thank you, Naruto." He looked away awkwardly, still red in the face, and gave a small nod. She giggled softly at the sight. Wait, giggle? She hadn't done that in years. Not since before her clan had been wiped out. She never even laughed at genuine jokes. Yet somehow, being around Naruto was chipping away at her walls. Naruto, settling back onto his cot, studied her again. Another question left his lips. So, now that you've opened up a little, do you still want to kill that man you're always talking about? At once, her face hardened, her voice cold. Yes. But unlike the Sasuke mask, I want to hear his true reason first. The answer he gave me before didn't sound like him. I need to know the truth before I strike him down. Naruto nodded solemnly. Revenge wasn't something he could judge her for. He had his own grudges, his own debts to settle. Who was he to say the world didn't deserve to lose an eye in exchange for an eye? Still, curiosity gnawed at him. And who exactly is this him you keep mentioning? Her reply came out sharper than she meant. That's none of your concern. Naruto let out a frustrated sigh, leaning back. And just like that, we're back at square one. One moment she was soft and approachable, the next she was sinking into that brooding persona again. He figured it must have been part of her defense, her inner emo slipping back in. Best not to push further, she'd already told him plenty. Her eyes narrowed again. Are you done with your questions? Naruto rolled his shoulders. Yeah, I'm finished. Her frown softened slightly. Good, because now it's my turn. First question, what exactly happened in the Forest of Death that awakened your Kekkei Genkai? Naruto smirked. Why do you want to know? Because one moment you fell to what looked like certain death, and when you reappeared, your entire demeanor and strength had changed. From what I've gathered, it's a body-based Kekkei Genkai, but I haven't seen it in full. I want to know what it does. His smirk stayed in place. Exactly why I shouldn't tell you. A shinobi never reveals all his cards. The less the enemy knows, the greater my advantage. I might end up fighting you in the next round after all. Why should I reveal my hand? She clenched her jaw, irritation flashing across her face. And what about that promise? You swore to answer anything I asked. Naruto was about to retort when a knock sounded at the door, followed by a familiar voice. Sasuke-kun, are you inside? Suki glanced at him in alarm. We're not done here, she whispered sternly, watching his nod. Then panic settled in. But what do? I can't let Sakura see me like this. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Then transform. I'll keep her busy. She quickly agreed and darted to his bed, using a henge to disguise herself as a plain wooden box. The door creaked open, Sakura's head peeking in. Sasuke-kun. Her eyes scanned the room, but all she saw was Naruto sitting on his bed with a hand resting on a small box. He waved casually. What's up, Sakura? He asked, though his tone carried a forced politeness. Unintentionally, his fingers pressed against Suki's chest beneath the disguise, almost making her let out a sound. Sakura stepped inside, looking confused. Strain, I thought I heard another voice. What did the Hokage want with you? Naruto's answer was clipped. Just to talk. Her expression shifted to one of hurt. Why are you acting like this? His laugh was cold and sharp. Acting like what? How am I supposed to behave, Sakura? You never cared before. It was always Sasuke-kun this, Sasuke-kun that. You never once gave a damn about me. Her eyes softened. Naruto, that's not true. He snapped back, bitterness lacing his words. Then how would I know? All you ever did was hit me. Her expression hardened. That's because you never stopped pestering me for dates. I told you countless times, I don't like you like that. I like Sasuke-kun. Suki nearly groaned from inside her box. Typical, Sakura's obsession blinded her to everything else. Maybe if she'd actually focused on training instead of swooning, she would have grown into a competent kunoichi. And she knew it was nothing more than a childish crush. Still, hearing that Naruto had been rejected and beaten for simply asking, that left a sour taste in her mouth. For once, she found herself actually angry at Sakura. Meanwhile, Naruto's hand absent-mindedly squeezed her again, making her bite down on a soft moan. Was he even aware of what he was grabbing? If he was, she'd deal with him later. Naruto leaned forward, voice low. Tell me then, what is it you like about Sasuke so much? Her blood ran cold. He wouldn't reveal the truth about her, would he? If he even hinted at it, she swore she'd. The pink-haired kunoichi froze at his words, her confusion evident as she asked, What are you talking about? Naruto's frown remained firm as his blue eyes bore into hers. I mean, why are you so obsessed with him? What do you and Ino see in Suki Achiha that the rest of us, yes, even Shikamaru, a genius, don't? Sakura blinked, caught off guard, then answered after a pause. Because Sasuke-kun is incredible. Every girl admires him. He's smart, attractive, the last survivor of his clan, and he has that mysterious aura. She trailed off, only to notice Naruto smirking. What's so funny, Naruto baka? Naruto let out a soft laugh, though his expression soon hardened. Sakura, what you just described isn't love, it's infatuation. It's shallow admiration at best. Her brows furrowed, irritation rising in her voice. And what exactly do you mean by that? You're simply echoing everyone else's feelings, he explained coldly. That's not love. You don't even know him as a person. Seeing her about to protest, he quickly cut her off. All right then, what's Sasuke's favorite food? She froze, scrambling for an answer. Sasuke-kun has never told me, sweet dango. Naruto's tone sliced through her words like a blade, his gaze sharp. He mentioned it once in Nami no Kuni when Tsunade offered to cook for him. His voice lowered, carrying bitter amusement. Funny, isn't it? I'm the one he argues with constantly, yet I know something about him you never bothered to learn. That says everything. Sakura's face flushed, part fury and part embarrassment. Shut up, Naruto baka. It's just one tiny detail I didn't know. Naruto, Virgil shook his head and turned away, chuckling humorlessly. As he walked off, Sakura demanded, Where are you going? Glancing back only once, his expression unreadable, he replied, To train. I need to reflect, including on why I ever liked you. With that, he left her standing there, her thoughts in disarray. Sakura's mind churned. Naruto was right. She didn't know anything truly personal about Sasuke. Every attempt she had made to connect with him had been met with his cold indifference. Where had she gone wrong? And Naruto himself, something had changed about him. He was no longer the goofy idiot she dismissed before. He carried himself with composure and power, sharper and darker than before, his very presence heavier than Sasuke's. What had happened to him? She now felt compelled to find out. Two mysteries lay before her, Sasuke's cold distance and Naruto's transformation. Determined, she dashed out, deciding to start with Sasuke. As the door shut, Sasuke released the genjutsu disguise, revealing Suki. With a sigh, she began rewrapping her chest. Fantastic! Now I've got her curiosity to deal with. Still, I can't believe he remembered that detail about Sasuke's food. 3 days later, the preliminaries during those 3 days, Naruto secluded himself in an underground chamber within the tower, relentlessly pushing his body and mind with shadow clones. Unlike before, when his growth was stunted by the Academy and Kakashi's neglect, now his progress was staggering. Thousands of clones trained each day on different aspects, taijutsu, ninjutsu, swordsmanship, sharpening him beyond recognition. In that time, he also came to a harsh truth. His old crush on Sakura had been nothing more than a desire to belong. Chasing her had been a way of forcing himself into normal. But now, after merging with Virgil, he saw the truth. Normalcy was meaningless. If people couldn't accept him as he was, they were worthless to him. Now disguised under his old appearance, Naruto stood beside his team in the tower's central arena. While the Hokage droned on with his speech, Naruto's mind wandered, analyzing the competition. From Konoha, teams 7, 8, 9, and 10 plus Kabuto's group. From Iwa, a single team led by a black-haired girl with pink eyes. From Kiiri, one unimpressive team. From Suna, the feared siblings of the desert. From AIM, another small group. And from Uzushio, a team that had made it this far, likely concealing their full ability. When the chance came, Naruto raised his hand to signal his desire for 2 matches. The proctor recorded it silently. Moments later, the screen revealed the first pairing, Kuretsuchi of Iwa versus Sakura of Konoha. Arena floor Naruto, Virgil, watched with detached interest as Sakura squared off against the pink-eyed Kunoichi. He wasn't invested in the outcome, only whether the fight would prove entertaining. Before the match even began, Sakura ruined her chances by loudly declaring she was fighting for her Sasuke-kun. From the twitch in Kuretsuchi's expression, it was obvious she despised fangirls. The confirmation came immediately. As soon as the signal was given, Kuretsuchi unleashed a massive lava dragon, the sheer heat catching the attention of every Konoha Jonin. Only one known shinobi in Iwa wielded lava release, and here it was in the hands of a genin. Gasps filled the room. The genin looked on in awe. But Sakura? She collapsed instantly, fainting before the dragon even reached her. Kuretsuchi sneered at the dead weight she had been matched against and stalked off. Naruto, with his heightened senses, picked up her teammates' hushed scolding. Kuretsuchi-sama, that was reckless. If Konoha learns of our plan too soon, the rest was drowned out by the crowd. Then the next names appeared. Naruko Namikaze versus Ganju Kisuhara of Rain. Naruto's eyes narrowed. The red-haired girl from Uzushio bore a striking resemblance to his own sexy jutsu form, differing only in hair color and the absence of whisker marks. The resemblance stirred a fleeting thought. Could we share blood? As the battle began, red barriers erupted around the arena. Almost immediately, monstrous figures of pride and lust manifested, swarming Ganju and killing him outright. Naruto fought desperately to defend herself. Naruto debated intervening, aware he alone could quell the chaos. But before he could act, Naruto bit her finger and smeared blood across a seal on her arm. Smoke erupted, and when it cleared, she held a blade Naruto recognized instantly. Rebellion. The weapon of Dante, Virgil's brother. Naruto's breath stilled. For Naruto to wield rebellion, she had to share some fragment of that bloodline or soul. Yet her technique was clumsy, her strikes nothing compared to Dante's mastery. Still, the fact she could even summon the sword meant something significant. By the time the last demon fell, Naruto had assessed her skill. She was strong compared to most genin, perhaps even Chunin, but nowhere near his level. A threat to the old him, perhaps, but to who he was now, nothing more than an insect. The next fight paired Sasuke, still under genjutsu against Yori Akato of Kabuto's team. Yori drained Sasuke's chakra, forcing the Uchiha to rely on taijutsu. Using a variation of Rock Lee's Lotus, Sasuke managed to knock him unconscious. Zaku Abumi versus Shino Aburame followed. Shino calmly overwhelmed Zaku with his insects, leaving his arms crippled and chakra depleted. Another swift, decisive win. Then Misumi Tsurugi faced Kankuro of Suna. Misumi's rubber-like body gave him an edge at first, but once Kankuro's puppetry came into play, the battle ended in Suna's favor. Temari versus Tenten was brutally one-sided. Temari's winds countered every weapon, her giant fan crushing Tenten's spine in the end. Rock Lee leapt to retaliate, only for Guy to restrain him before disqualification could follow. Shikamaru versus Kin Tsuchai was a slow, tactical battle. Using his shadow imitation, he trapped her into copying his every move, then knocked her out by slamming her head into the wall. The following matches dwindled in excitement. 2 fighters from Uzu and Rock annihilated each other, leaving both dead. By the end of the preliminaries, only a few stood out. Kuretsuchi for Iwa, Naruto for Uzushio, and of course Naruto, Virgil, who had yet to reveal his true strength. After the earlier bouts concluded, the match that Naruto had been waiting for finally arrived, his fight against Kiba. The only reason Virgil, Naruto's current guise, even realized it was time was because Kiba's loud and cocky voice echoed through the hall. "We got lucky, Akamaru." That arrogant declaration made Naruto smirk inwardly. Kiba thought he had already secured victory simply because of his reputation in the academy. That very overconfidence would become his undoing. Rather than rushing, Naruto chose to walk slowly toward the arena. The deliberate pace not only allowed him to notice who was paying attention to the match, but it also fueled Kiba's impatience. The more impulsive his opponent became, the easier it would be to defeat him without revealing his true strength. The tactic worked flawlessly. By the time Naruto stepped into the arena, Kiba was practically vibrating with the desire to strike. The moment the proctor gave the signal, the Inuzuka heir charged recklessly in a rage-filled assault. Instead of immediately finishing the battle, Virgil opted to toy with his pride. He calmly evaded every strike with minimal effort, even humming a tune under his breath, which only provoked Kiba further. Minutes passed before Naruto decided to end it. He stepped in close and slammed his forehead into Kiba's, knocking him out cold. The proctor declared Naruto the winner without hesitation. Taking in the reactions around him, Naruto noticed most of Konoha's shinobi were shocked at how easily he dismantled Kiba. A few, like Kurenai, glared with fury for personal reasons. The foreign shinobi showed something closer to respect, though Naruto and the red-haired Jonin leading her team glared with naked hatred. Mentally filing that hostility away for later consideration, Naruto left the arena as the next fight began. It was a Hyuga match, Hinata versus Neji. Neji immediately launched into psychological warfare, tearing down Hinata with cruel words meant to crush her spirit. Naruto's irritation flared. He despised seeing family turning on family, so he decided to intervene. From the balcony, his voice rang out, "Hinata-san, prove him wrong." Hearing him gave Hinata a spark of courage, enough to strengthen her resolve. She fought with determination and managed to push Neji harder than expected. But due to her lack of rigorous training, she eventually fell. When Neji moved to deliver a finishing blow, a Jonin stopped him, and he began ranting about the main family's oppression. When he finished, Naruto's sharp voice cut through the silence. "I may not return Hinata-san's feelings, nor ever will, but I despise those who abuse their own blood. You're on my list now. Pray to whatever useless god you follow that we don't face each other in this exam." Following that came Rock Lee against Ino Yamanaka. The fight barely lasted half a minute. Lee delivered a devastating punch to Ino's stomach, instantly knocking her out. Without missing a beat, he loudly proclaimed a series of absurd promises about training harder to make up for such a swift victory. Then came Gaara versus Naruto. The redhead shifted between an eerie grin and a nervous twitch. Most Konoha shinobi watched in horror, already familiar with the rumors of Gaara's blood-soaked rampage during the forest exam. Virgil, however, remained unfazed. To him, an opponent was an opponent. The instant the match started, Gaara's sand rushed forward, attempting to capture him. But as soon as Naruto sensed the dark presence within the sand, he deliberately released a small surge of the Nine-Tails chakra. His theory was correct. The sand refused to harm him, recoiling as Shukaku instinctively avoided angering the elder beast sealed inside Naruto. With his opponent unable to touch him, Naruto swiftly forced Gaara's surrender by pressing a kunai to his throat. To him, the fight was anticlimactic once he uncovered the trick. Leaving the arena, he rejoined his team as the next fight began, a clash between the two remaining ranged shinobi, which ended in a double knockout. The final match paired Choji Akimichi against Dasu Kinuta. Initially hesitant and ready to forfeit, Choji was persuaded to fight by Asuma's promise of food. He charged in with his human bullet tank technique, blocking out sound by covering his ears. Yet Dasu adapted quickly, channeling sound through the water within Choji's body, incapacitating him. Once the winners gathered, they were instructed to draw lots from a box held by Anko. Naruto's minor genjutsu remained unnoticed, keeping his disguise intact. When the names were drawn, the results were: first match, Naruto Uzumaki vs Naruko Namikaze. Second match, Suki Achiha vs. Rock Lee. Third match, Neji Hyuga vs Kuretsuchi Aviwa 4th match. Shino Aburame vs Kankuro, Sabaku 5th match. Temari Sabaku vs Shikamaru Nara vs. Dasu Kinuta. With the matchups finalized, the genin were dismissed to rest and train for the finals, scheduled in 1 month. Naruto watched carefully, noting how most candidates showed grim acceptance, while a few radiated eager anticipation. Meanwhile, in the Hokage's office, Hiruzen Sarutobi exhaled heavily. With intelligence from both Naruto and Jiraiya, he was certain Orochimaru's invasion would occur during the finals. Konoha's very survival might hinge on the outcome. Later, outside the hospital, Virgil, still maintaining his henge, stood before Kakashi, his patience stretched thin. Kakashi had just informed him he would not be trained for the finals, nor could he find a substitute. The excuse felt too convenient, especially given his opponent. Narrowing his eyes, Naruto asked pointedly, "This wouldn't have anything to do with the fact that my opponent is your sensei's daughter, would it?" Kakashi faltered, looking guilty. "Naruto, it's not that I don't want to train you. Sasuke's fighting Guy's protege. If I don't prepare him properly, Lee will defeat him, and I'll never hear the end of it from Guy. As for replacements, you know how most of the village treats you." Naruto stiffly nodded. "I understand. It doesn't matter, I have techniques of my own to perfect. Extra training would only slow me down." As he turned to leave, he added, "Do me a favor though, sensei. Make sure Sasuke gets the training he needs. Without it, things might turn out very badly." Kakashi froze, pale as realization struck, but before he could respond, Naruto was gone. After a fruitless search, the Jonin forced himself to relax, his mind wandering to how Naruto might know Suki. The most ironic possibility, one involving marriage, crossed his thoughts, and with a sigh, he headed back to begin Sasuke's training. Half a day later, Naruto entered the Forest of Death, his mind focused on what training to pursue. The clearest path was to master the abilities he had gained from clearing the tower previously. Though he could perform them, true mastery would multiply their power many times over. The tower itself was more than a connection to the demon realm. It also housed a domain Sparta had created for his heirs, the Bloody Palace. From faint inherited memories, Naruto knew that even an S-rank shinobi would struggle to surpass the 5,000th floor. With a grin, he stepped into the first level. As the environment materialized and the first demonic enemies appeared, he chuckled darkly. "Might controls everything, and without might, you can't protect anything." Elsewhere, at Training Ground 66, Kushina and her daughter sparred. The final echo of Naruto's words seemed to drift through the air. "Not even yourself." Strangely, they didn't react, as if they hadn't heard his voice at all. It was as if they were caught in a dreamlike haze during their training sessions. The source of this strange condition could be traced back to the identical pendants each of them wore. If someone skilled in sensing energy were to examine them closely, they would notice faint traces of demonic chakra being released. The flow was subtle, but enough to influence the mind, an unsophisticated yet disturbingly effective method of manipulation. The real mystery was not the pendants themselves, but who had access to such cursed artifacts, and who would benefit from placing them in the hands of unsuspecting shinobi. With the Sand Trio, the Suna siblings and their sensei were facing a grim problem of their own. Gaara, once their strongest weapon, was no longer reliable. His usual dominance, tied to the might of Shukaku, was shattered by a single Konoha shinobi, someone who until now had gone unnoticed. The true disaster came when Gaara revealed that Shukaku himself outright refused to battle the boy. For the Jinchuriki of the One-Tail feared his opponent carried the essence of its elder brother. This revelation cornered the Sand forces into an impossible choice. They could proceed with their plan, joining Sound and Iwa, but risk being destroyed alongside them. Or they could expose the scheme to Konoha, avoid immediate destruction at the hands of the Nine-Tails vessel, yet forever place themselves in Konoha's debt for their betrayal. The debate among the four of them would carry consequences that could alter the balance of the world. For now, their choice remained uncertain, but one thing was guaranteed: the outcome would be monumental. With Shino at the Aburame training grounds, the young heir of the Aburame clan wiped the sweat from his brow as he paused to recover. Normally, he would push through fatigue without pause, but today's training was unlike his usual exercises. His clan was simulating puppet-based combat, preparing him for a future confrontation. To do this, they employed intricate seals and chakra threads to mimic a puppeteer's movements, creating a frighteningly authentic experience. When they revealed a towering puppet modeled after an armored samurai with 6 arms, even Shino felt a chill in his chest. His years of discipline helped him suppress emotion, but without that restraint, he might have fled the field. One thing was certain: if this brutal training failed to prepare him, Shino was ready to consider far darker measures to claim victory. With Neji Hyuga, the Hyuga clan prodigy believed he had no need to exert himself. Fate, in his mind, had already secured his triumph in the upcoming tournament. No amount of training from his rivals would alter that predetermined outcome. He was destined to win, and afterward, he would seek the answer to a deeper question. Would fate grant him the chance to exact revenge upon the main branch? The thought of vengeance brought a faint, cold smile to his lips. The Hyuga would one day pay for the death of his father, and Neji welcomed that inevitable day. With Shikamaru at the Nara training grounds, flat on his back, Shikamaru gazed at the drifting clouds while his mind ran through the battles from the preliminaries. He had managed to work out strategies for most of his opponents, save for one, Naruto. The blonde's match had revealed nothing of substance, and the only clue to his true abilities came from the Forest of Death, where a brief glimpse hinted at the use of kenjutsu. A highly mobile swordsman was among the most troublesome foes for Inara, and though his clan had devised counters for such enemies, Shikamaru could not be sure kenjutsu was all Naruto had at his disposal. The uncertainty nagged at him. With Kuretsuchi at the Iwa embassy training grounds, the granddaughter of the third Tsuchikage stood alone in the practice field, visibly irritated. Her instructors insisted she needed no further preparation for her mission, but she despised idleness. The lack of action gnawed at her, making every moment feel wasted. Of course, she could amuse herself by harassing the villagers or even tormenting the hated offspring of Namikaze, but she knew such antics would cost her the chance to take missions outside Iwa. For now, she was trapped in boredom, counting the days until the exams resumed. With Suki outside Konoha, the young Uchiha heiress clenched her jaw in frustration as Kakashi laid out the eccentric training plan he had devised for her. Though undeniably effective, the method bordered on insanity. Unable to hold back, she asked one pressing question: "What about Naruto? Why isn't he training here too?" Kakashi's expression darkened. "He has his own path to follow. I wouldn't be able to help him with the training he requires. Besides, you two are both participants in the exam. If I trained you together, it would give one of you an unfair advantage." Suki did not like the answer. She suspected he was withholding something, but in the shinobi world, suspicion only carried weight if it could be backed with proof. For now, she would bide her time until her next meeting with Naruto. With Dasu at the foreign training grounds, the sound shinobi grimaced as he tried to restore movement in his arms, which he had altered in pursuit of greater strength. Orochimaru had been generous enough to provide him and his teammates with proper clone techniques, allowing them to spar with realistic opponents. Yet Dasu couldn't shake his unease. If his growing suspicions about Orochimaru's plan were correct, then he might need to eliminate the Sabaku siblings and disguise it as an accident. For that, he would need far more power and control of his damaged arms. At the Konoha Hot Springs 1 week before the exam, in a rare sight, Kuretsuchi, Anko Mitarashi, Kurenai Yuhai, Naruko Uzumaki Namikaze, and Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze all shared the same hot spring, relaxing in peace. Though shinobi from rival villages often clashed outside, the unspoken rule among Kunoichi was that onsens were neutral ground. Here, they behaved like ordinary women, bathing together and helping wash one another's backs. Most knew better than to disturb such gatherings. But Jiraiya, ever the self-proclaimed researcher, perched in a nearby tree with his notebook, greedily scribbling inspiration for his novels. Unfortunately, while his concealment jutsu kept him hidden from the women, it failed against the eyes of a passing silver-haired swordsman in a long blue coat. Mistaking him for Kakashi at first, the stranger casually rested a hand on his blade, causing the branch Jiraiya sat upon to collapse, sending the Sannin crashing into the women's side of the spring. The Kunoichi promptly unleashed their wrath on Jiraiya, pummeling him until he was left barely conscious. After dressing and leaving, they hoped to find whoever had exposed the voyeur. Their search led them to the marketplace, where they caught a fleeting glimpse of the silver-haired swordsman disappearing around a corner. Anko's breath caught. That's him, the one who destroyed the cursed seal and erased the soul fragment with it. The group hurried after him, desperate for answers, but by the time they turned the corner, the swordsman was gone. Each woman silently resolved to uncover his identity and understand why he had freed Anko without demanding anything in return. At the Chunin exam arena, 1 week later, the finalists, excluding Dasu, Naruto, and Sasuke, stood within the enormous stadium, nerves tense as they surveyed the scene. The stands were packed with nobles, daimyos, foreign guests, and an unusually high number of Konoha shinobi. Most intimidating of all was the presence of 3 of the 5 Great Kage, the 3rd Hokage, the 4th Kazekage, and the 3rd Tsuchikage. For the rookies, it was overwhelming. To falter under the gaze of such power meant their shinobi careers might never recover. The proctor gave a short speech on the significance of the exams, words the competitors scarcely listened to before announcing the matches. First match. Naruto Uzumaki vs Naruko Namikaze, second match. Sasuke Uchiha vs Rock Lee, third match. Neji Hyuga vs Kuretsuchi of Iwa, fourth match. Shino Aburame vs Kankuro, Sabaku, fifth match. Temari Sabaku vs Shikamaru Nara. The moment the name, Namikaze, was spoken, the Konoha crowd erupted into wild cheers. For many, this was the chance for Minato's daughter to fulfill her father's legacy by erasing the Kyuubi once and for all. When the proctor ordered everyone but Naruto and Naruko to clear the field, silence fell across the arena. Minutes passed, but Naruto did not arrive. Just as the proctor prepared to declare his forfeit, the ground shook as a colossal toad with crystal-like spikes on its back stumbled into the stadium. The audience froze in disbelief. Jiraiya and those sensitive to demonic chakra were stunned, their eyes locked on the beast. But even more shocking was the sight that followed. Naruto entered, clad in ornate Beowolf gauntlets and greaves, radiating an aura so intense it chilled even his harshest critics. The crowd, once eager for his downfall, now trembled at the sheer presence of the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki standing before them. The impact intensified as he leapt into the air, driving one armored knee into the toad demon. The creature froze instantly, turning into a solid column of ice before shattering into countless fragments. Where its head had been, a small golden orb emerged, soaring toward the blonde and vanishing in a burst of radiant light. When the glow subsided, he was revealed clutching a briefcase, glowing lines converging on a seal at its center. For a brief moment, the young man seemed entranced, before a smirk curved his lips and he casually set aside his newly acquired toy. Turning to the Jonin, who nervously chewed on his senbon, he said, "Apologies for my delay. I had to deal with a weakling who believed he could make a meal of me. Now, shall we begin?" Genma nodded and activated a voice amplifier jutsu. The first bout of the Chunin exam finals between Naruto Uzumaki and Naruko Namikaze, BJNS. The 2 descendants of Sparta assumed their chosen stances. Naruto took the ready stance of the legendary strike taijutsu style, while Naruko adopted a loose, fluid stance, leaving herself free to strike without revealing her intent. For 2 minutes, neither moved. They simply stared, or in Naruko's case, glared, at each other, analyzing weaknesses, judging balance and reach. It was Naruko who broke the stalemate. She hurled 20 kunai at Naruto, which multiplied to 2,000 via the Shuriken Shadow clone jutsu. Yet the steel storm drew no reaction. Naruto remained steadfast. When the swarm was 30 feet from him, he thrust his right palm forward, releasing a wave of air that vaporized every kunai in an instant, stopping just short of the young Namikaze. Konoha's residents gasped in shock, particularly those who had seen Naruto in the preliminaries. He had never displayed proficiency in wind-based jutsu, and some Suna representatives speculated whether he had somehow mimicked Temari's techniques. Before they could dwell on it, Naruko bit her finger, applied her blood to a storage seal, and summoned rebellion. The crowd's astonishment intensified. Few her age could wield such a massive blade. Red-haired and fierce, Naruko charged, swinging rebellion one-handed with reckless fury. Yet each strike was effortlessly parried by the semi-armored, silver-haired Okatana wielder. The relentless pace soon left Naruko winded, giving Virgil the perfect window for counterattack. He struck rapidly, targeting points that would disable but not kill, guided by an instinct he could not fully explain. A kick to her face, ordinarily enough to render someone unconscious, only caused her to slump momentarily. She rose again, the amulet on her chest radiating a sinister yellow aura and exuding malevolent energy. Panic rippled through Konoha, the onlookers whispering that the Kyuubi had corrupted the Namikaze air. Outsiders were equally unsettled. Naruto, however, remained calm, having sensed the steadily growing demonic presence emanating from the amulet throughout the match. Then the girl transformed. Dark purple mist engulfed the stadium, and when it dissipated, a nightmarish figure stood in her place. 7 feet tall, clad in black and purple demonic armor, it had 4 insectoid wings and 2 additional wing sheaths. Its pale blue face was filled with razor teeth, blood-red eyes burned with malice, and sharp horns completed its fearsome visage. To the uninformed, the figure seemed a demon born of legend, radiating dread. Those with knowledge of demonic lore recognized a high-ranking demon, perhaps even a devil. Experts, however, saw what others could not: the legendary Dark Knight Sparta, meaning the young Namikaze carried the bloodline of the legendary warrior. Naruto's response was unexpected. He laughed, long and loud, then spoke. "I shouldn't be surprised, Namikaze. You've inherited your father's gift for the impossible. Perhaps the amulet forced this transformation to match Sparta. Either way, it's time to stop playing. Reveal yourself, Mundus." A dark laughter filled the sky, black clouds blotting out the sun, 3 blood-red eyes flashing crimson lightning. "You are smarter than I anticipated, brat, but enough games. It is time to show your true form, descendant of that cursed traitor." Virgil raised an eyebrow. "How? Wait, never mind. You must have some kind of sensor ability to know what I am. Fine, I'll show my true form, but know this, your puppet won't survive." He formed a hand seal, muttered "Kai," and a massive cloud of smoke blanketed the arena. When it cleared, the stunned gasps of Anko filled the air. Virgil was now in his true form, clad in the outfit he wore leaving the tower, Yamato in his gauntleted right hand, an unmistakable deadly presence. Pandemonium erupted. Naruto's detractors screamed for his head, but the audience's attention fixated on his true power. The monstrous figure, seen as a threat by the ignorant, charged, intent on slashing him with a massive Zweihander. Every strike was blocked or dodged with precision. Occasional counters were delivered, but Virgil mainly allowed the possessed girl to exhaust herself. His assessment proved accurate. The relentless assault had nearly drained her energy. Her final attack was caught effortlessly in Naruto's gauntleted left hand. He glared at Mundus, voice dripping venom. "You underestimated a Sparta descendant again, Mundus. This time, you've earned a spot just below Orochimaru on my idiots to impale on Yamato list." A brief humor flashed in his tone before he severed the amulet with a blade of wind and stomped on it, shattering it. The possession ended, the devil trigger vanished, and Naruto collapsed, unconscious from exhaustion. Before the match could be officially awarded to Virgil, a crimson blur streaked toward him. To most, it was a blur. To the silver-haired warrior, it was clear: Kushina Namikaze. Wearing a replica amulet, she moved swiftly, and a judgment slash shattered the amulet without harm to her. She collapsed immediately afterward, and a blue glow erupted, flashing white, revealing a woman identical to Naruto's memory of his prior incarnation's mother. Naruto glared at Mundus. "You better hope this isn't who I think it is. If it is, congratulations, you just claimed the top spot on my idiots to impale on Yamato list." Mundus visibly gulped, then vanished. With both Kunoichi removed and Virgil declared the victor, Genma announced the next match. "Will Suki Achiha and Rock Lee come down to the arena floor?" Lee dropped into the arena, but Sasuke was absent. After a minute, a Chunin whispered in Genma's ear, prompting him to continue. "Ladies and gentlemen, Suki Achiha and Rock Lee's match will be moved to the end of this round. Will Neji Hyuga and Kuretsuchi of Iwa please enter the arena?" As the two competitors faced each other in the arena, Virgil's shadow clone allowed himself a small, self-satisfied smirk. "I have to admit, the boss strategy is impressive. Sending me in his stead has given him plenty of time to weaken Orochimaru's forces. Even more astonishing, Sarutobi trusted him enough to share sensitive information about the invasion without hesitation." Before he could dwell further on this, the match concluded, and he found Neji being carried out on a stretcher. The young Hyuga's lower legs, and more embarrassingly, his private area, had been completely melted away by a triumphant Iwa Kanoichi. The clone's expression twisted slightly at the sight. Someone really couldn't keep quiet. I just hope I can neutralize her before she causes even more chaos once Orochimaru's invasion begins. When Kuretsuchi approached him, her grin made the clone tense. Anyone would be wary of a woman who had just destroyed her opponent so thoroughly for reasons unknown. Yet, surprisingly, she seemed to sense his discomfort and spoke to calm him. "Relax. I only melted him because he said something about me becoming his slave. Anyway, congratulations on defeating the last two Namikaze, though the second wasn't supposed to happen." The clone nodded, acknowledging her words, before turning his gaze toward Kankuro. The Sand Ninja had forfeited his fight to keep his poisons secret before the invasion. And Virgil's tone was icy. "I didn't realize the Sand Ninjas were so cowardly. But then again, what else would you expect from someone obsessed with makeup?" Kankuro's face darkened with anger, but his loyalty to the Alliance held him back from lashing out. After all, Iwa had contributed 2 of its Jinchuriki to the invasion, and it would be foolish not to participate in what seemed like a guaranteed victory. Still, the battlefield had already begun to show signs that their confidence might be misplaced. Everything now rested in Kami's hands. Chunin Exam Arena, Temari versus Shikamaru. At first, it seemed the match might not happen. Shikamaru was ready to forfeit. However, Virgil's clone needed time for the original to continue thinning Orochimaru's forces. Calmly, he delivered a kick that sent the reluctant genin sprawling to the arena floor. By sheer luck or misfortune, Shikamaru's fall caused no serious injury, but it triggered a drastic shift in his demeanor. Now, instead of facing a lazy, unmotivated genius, Temari confronted a highly driven Shikamaru, whose actions were bizarrely, inappropriately, and inexplicably driven by desire. Every shadow he manipulated carried a secondary purpose, groping the blonde wind mistress. Unsurprisingly, Temari became increasingly agitated. Her fears were confirmed when she leapt to evade one intrusive shadow, only to become ensnared in multiple others that sought to provoke her further. Before the situation could escalate completely, she forfeited. Virgil's clone swiftly incapacitated Shikamaru. Though he suspected this encounter wouldn't be the last mischief from the genin, his immediate concern was preventing Temari from harming him. Fortunately, the Kazekige's warning that losing control could remove her from the shinobi corps forced her to restrain herself temporarily. Naruto helped Shikamaru retreat to the stands, keeping him out of Temari's reach should she erupt again. This only redirected her anger toward him, but Kuretsuchi, who had begun taking a cautious interest in his survival, intervened. Using earth manipulation, she buried Temari up to her neck, forcing her to cool down. The proctor announced the next match. The fight between Suki Achiha and Rock Lee will begin in 2 minutes. All contestants must reach the arena floor, or they will be disqualified. Lee leapt to the arena floor instantly. Sasuke, however, remained absent. As the timer ticked down, tension rose until, with seconds to spare, Sasuke appeared alongside Kakashi. The disguised Uchiha spoke with feigned nonchalance. "Apologies for the delay. We had to take a detour due to a flood, faced mercenaries along the way, easily dealt with, of course, and even declined offers of marriage from a village head's daughters. A flock of crows then transported us to the other side of Konoha, but we managed to arrive safely." Konoha residents gaped at the elaborate excuses, yet knew better than to challenge Kakashi's influence over his subordinates. Genma's voice echoed through the arena, amplified by sealing techniques. "The final match of the first round is about to begin. Sasuke Uchiha, are you ready?" The Uchiha clan heir nodded and assumed the interceptor fist stance. Genma turned to Rock Lee. The exuberant genin assumed his strong fist stance, shouting loudly about testing his youth and carrying impossible burdens if he failed. Virgil, unable to tolerate the endless shouting, let demonic power surge through his voice. "Lee, shut up, or I will personally send your soul to whatever god you worship. Am I clear, or do you need a diagram?" Lee quickly nodded, realizing this being surpassed even his beloved Gai-sensei in power. "Yes, I am ready, Proctor," he said, subdued. Before the match could officially start, Thousands of white feathers filled the arena, accompanied by subtle genjutsu. A sudden burst of demonic energy from Virgil's clone dispelled them, catching the invading forces off guard. This brief window allowed Konoha forces, forewarned of the attack, to inflict massive casualties on the stunned invaders, with Iwa suffering heavily due to historical enmity. Genin were organized into small teams under Chunin supervision to ensure survival and assistance. Kuretsuchi was incapacitated by a different Virgil clone and taken to Temen Naiguru, cutting her off from rescue and leaving her vulnerable to the less noble Anbu. Similarly, Temari, Kenkuro, and Gaara were neutralized and transported to the tower. Meanwhile, a small explosion erupted in the cage booth, filling the arena with smoke. Orochimaru, Anoki, Sarutobi, and the original Virgil emerged, landing on the vacated arena floor. Immediately, a massive red barrier rose, encasing the area like a cage. Above, where the cage booth had stood, a throne made of bones and skulls materialized. A shadowy figure appeared upon it, its only visible feature a demonic samurai helmet carved from an ancient skull. Ahaha, what sport! Fight, foolish humans, for the entertainment of Lord Shao Kahn, master of mortal combat, and performer for gods and demon lords. Virgil sighed. His memories revealed Shao Kahn as a persistent, eccentric spirit intent on providing supreme entertainment across dimensions. Though he despised the notion, he recognized the need to comply and perform. The others in the arena, unaware of the spirit's nature, glared defiantly until bolts of crimson lightning rained from the ceiling. The mad display forced the humans to fight, not for honor, but for the amusement of the interdimensional audience. The four ninja, without exchanging a single word, each chose their opponents. The Sandaime faced off against his longtime rival Unoki, while Virgil squared off against Orochimaru. As the elder pair exchanged casual barbs, the duel between the two sword-wielders began. Orochimaru, true to his reckless nature, was the first to strike, charging forward with the Kusanagi ready to pierce Virgil. Yet, as always, the Serpentine Sannin had misjudged Virgil's abilities. Orochimaru assumed the silver-haired teen was only on par with a high-level Jonin, and would soon pay the price for underestimating him. But for the moment, Virgil seemed content to toy with his adversary, indulging his demonic side's cruel amusement more than aiming to truly defeat him. Virgil dodged attacks with ease, occasionally parrying only when convenient, and his counters were delivered with minimal effort, leaving only shallow scratches across Orochimaru's pale form. This cycle repeated for several minutes, amounting to little more than minor irritation for the Sannin. Then, after a brief pause, Orochimaru threw back his head and screamed, a gesture Yamato's wielder interpreted as frustration. In reality, that scream marked a turning point. When the Sannin's head snapped back into place, the subtle insanity in his eyes was replaced with a glacial, demonic glare. Orochimaru whispered, voice low and chilling, I know this isn't your best, boy. The spirit of the Yamata no Orochi sealed in my blade can sense it. Don't insult me with such a feeble attempt. He extended the Kusanagi into a massive 8-foot-long blade. Now come at me with everything you've got. Virgil smirked darkly. Everything I've got? Do you truly think you stand a chance against me at full strength? Don't make me laugh. During my month of solo training, I fought my way through the Bloody Palace, a trial built by the Dark Knight Sparta to test his descendants. There, I faced the final guardian, my prior incarnation's father, the very one who created it. He trailed off for a moment, lost in memory. Orochimaru, curious thanks to the Yamata no Orochi's spirit, did not attack, sensing the truth in Virgil's words. It was over quickly, not even 10 minutes. The old man fought fiercely, but ultimately I overcame him. So tell me, vile serpent, do you believe you could fight me on equal footing? Orochimaru's confidence faltered, though his pride as one of the Sannin and the master of the snake-summoning contract, as well as the host of Yamata no Orochi's soul, forbade him from retreating. That would be his final mistake. Virgil exploited it without hesitation, using air trick to appear directly before Orochimaru, striking with Yamato. The blow not only bisected the Sannin, but sent his soul straight into the waiting hands of the Shinigami. With Orochimaru's death, the barrier confining the four dissolved, and Shao Kahn vanished without a trace. Naruto confirmed the enemy leader's disappearance before turning to Sarutobi and Unoki, only to be met with an absurd sight. The two elderly cages sat beneath a surviving tree, smoking what the Sparta descendant recognized as weed, reading Ika Ika, with a scroll titled Peace Treaty Clause M from the Third War between them. The scroll's very name was enough to make Virgil want to explode. He strode over, grabbing the intercom from the fallen cage podium. Handing it to Unoki, the Tsuchikage ordered his remaining forces, including 2 reserved Jinchuriki, to surrender. Most complied, though a few refused, driven by vengeance for fallen comrades. Those rebels were swiftly eliminated by the Iwa Jinchuriki, as Unoki had no intention of fully engaging Konoha. Recent intel indicated that the Yondame's son was alive, allowing the peace treaty's marriage clause to proceed as planned. A convenient setup that would bring Kuretsuchi and Vergil together. The two cages now faced the daunting task of informing those involved in the treaty without being killed, a challenge made all the more real by the effortless brutality displayed by the silver-haired teen. Hokage's Tower. Konoha had emerged from the surprise attack by Suna, Sound, and Iwa relatively unscathed, even strengthened by the display of power from a new legend. Virgil Sparta, the Demon Slayer. Currently, Virgil and Kuretsuchi were restrained by hundreds of wooden vines conjured by Tenzo, preventing them from harming Unoki and Sarutobi. The two cages had discovered the scroll's contents and feared the consequences. The two village leaders cowered before the overwhelming killing intent of Virgil and Kuretsuchi, especially as the roots began to wither under their sheer power. Just before the vines collapsed entirely, Jiraiya arrived, inadvertently placing himself in harm's way and accidentally groping Kuretsuchi in the chaos. The sounds of crushing bones and wet snaps echoed through the Hokage's tower, culminating in a high-pitched scream that silenced all nearby. Meanwhile, in a casino somewhere in the Fire Country, a busty blonde woman laughed maniacally at the sky, unnerving patrons and her traveling companion. Back at the tower, Tenzo and the two cages cautiously peeked around a wooden wall. The sight before them was horrifying, a once-proud shinobi reduced to a mangled heap, while the two previously restrained attackers now stood calmly, indifferent to their earlier aggression. Tenzo whispered to the cages, "If they come after you again, I'm out. No pay is worth enduring that level of punishment." And Virgil spoke at that moment. "Why am I involved in this marriage contract? I can understand Kuretsuchi being the Tsuchikage's granddaughter, but the others offered, aren't they supposed to be related to a cage?" He paused, mentally processing the evidence. Shock then crossed his face. "Oh no, oh hell no. You mean I'm connected to the fourth, and by extension those idiots from Uzu?" When the cages hesitantly nodded, Virgil's eye twitched violently. "I'm going for a walk in the woods. I have no idea when I'll return. If anyone follows, I will kill them, break the next group to death with their own arms, and send their heads back." With that, he departed, giving the downed Sannin one last brutal kick. Kuretsuchi followed, leaving a small splash of lava on the Sannin's family jewels. Jiraiya sprang to his feet, laughing. "Well, Sarutobi-sensei, looks like they handled that well." Unoki stared in disbelief. "How are you even standing? You shouldn't be able to speak after that." Jiraiya chuckled. "That was the worst beating since Tsunade left, and I lost my chance to peek on her. Compared to her punishments, that barely hurt." Tenzo, confused, asked why he hadn't stayed down. Jiraiya explained with a wistful smile. "One thing I learned from Tsunade. If someone thinks they've done enough to knock you out, they leave you alone. If you get up too soon, they'll continue, doubling their effort. It's a useful way to gauge strength for missions like this." He chuckled, the memory leaving a glint in his eye. Sarutobi lifted a single eyebrow, silently prompting the self-proclaimed super pervert to elaborate. Jiraiya smiled and obliged. "From what I observed during that fight, those two are absolute powerhouses, though I'm sure you already suspected as much. Naruto's raw strength is currently around a quarter of Tsunade's, but with time, that gap will only shrink. His chakra reserves are far beyond cage level, yet he's holding himself back. His control is precise. Give him enough time, and he could master every ninja technique in existence if he desired. Beyond that, his mindset is razor-sharp. Judging by the blows he delivered, he can neutralize any threat efficiently and without hesitation. I'd say, without question, he deserves an S-rank classification right now." The toad summoner paused to breathe deeply, then added, Kuretsuchi, by contrast, is less of a threat. She's competent, definitely above average, but compared to Naruto, she's closer to an A rank. The other three shinobi quietly nodded in agreement with Jiraiya's assessment. Sarutobi then asked, So when do you plan to inform them about their new assignment? Jiraiya shivered slightly before replying, If this kid inherited Kushina's temper, he'll probably kill me if I approach him during one of his walks. I'll wait until he returns. A bandit camp in the forest outside Konoha. Dato Tsukumi and Gato Xian, two unremarkable men known primarily as sentries for the Black Sun's gang, lounged idly while waiting for their shift change. You know, Dato, Gato said with a grin, today's been perfect. That last convoy had some prime targets, and by the time we finish our shift, they'll probably be broken enough to be compliant. The boss gave us a solid payout and some quality loot for our loyalty. And the best part, not a single meddling shinobi has investigated the missing caravan yet. Dato laughed. Yeah, everything's aligning perfectly. Who'd suspect a group of so-called pathetic bandits camping near a ninja village? Their conversation halted abruptly when a whistled tune floated down the path. Both men turned to see a silver-haired young man strolling carelessly toward them, his noble air unmistakable. The bandits froze, but Gato, feeling confident, called out, Hey kid, you're entering Black Sun's territory. Lucky for you, if you turn back now, we'll let you walk for a small fee, of course. Sound like a fair deal? The silver-haired youth merely chuckled. That's a tempting offer if I were in a charitable mood. Unfortunately, I've just discovered I'm bound by a marriage contract, and let's just say it's put me in a foul mood. Here's a better deal. Step aside and let me annihilate your friends, and I won't harm you. How's that for a bargain? The bandits laughed dismissively. Their laughter died instantly. With a speed too quick for the eye, Virgil struck, severing both men in an instant. As they attempted to move, their bodies betrayed them, splitting violently, leaving them dead before shock could even register. Virgil entered the center of the camp, projecting his voice over the chaos of screams and the sounds of violence around him. Greetings, everyone. I am Virgil Sparta. I was merely taking a walk when these two fools tried to obstruct me. After everything I've endured today, I felt justified in dealing with them. But I'll give you one chance to surrender. Refuse, and no member of the Black Suns will leave alive. As expected, the bandits refused, and Virgil eliminated them with ruthless efficiency. When Jiraiya and his ANBU arrived 30 minutes later after hearing about the caravan, they were horrified by the massacre. The fact that only Naruto was unharmed, and moving, alongside the freed captives, who were rummaging through the camp for clothing while mocking the fallen bandits, confirmed Jiraiya's earlier assessment. He asked Naruto what happened here, and Virgil smirked. I was walking through the forest when those two idiots tried to extort me. I refused and killed them instantly. I then encountered the camp. After politely requesting surrender, they refused, leaving me no choice but to eliminate them, except for one. One ANBU rookie, visibly shaken, asked, What happened to the last one? Naruto laughed, pointing to a crossbowman with a bolt piercing his neck. He chickened out. Jiraiya sighed, sweat forming on his brow. Anyway, I have a new mission for you and Kuretsuchi. I've already told her, but you'll accompany me to locate Tsunade Senju and persuade her to become the fifth Hokage. Crater City, 30 miles from Konoha, 3 days later. The group made steady progress, although traveling at a pace that was painfully slow for someone like Naruto. Stopping in towns to gather news of Tsunade and letting Jiraiya conduct his research stretched the journey. On the bright side, the slower pace allowed Virgil to learn more about his fiancée and even take her on a casual date in one of the towns. It wasn't a grand romantic affair, but a simple outing to the finest local restaurant, which, by coincidence, served dishes predating chakra use, like pizza and barbecue. The dinner was peaceful enough until a group of drunk gangsters harassed Kuretsuchi, insisting she entertain them. She refused, and Virgil dispatched them without hesitation. Despite Kuretsuchi's ability to handle the threat herself, she couldn't help but smile at his protective instinct. Now, the group approached Crater City, the second-largest non-ninja settlement along the route. The city was known for gambling, though most travelers preferred Bakudo Tengoku, the legendary gambling hub a day away. They stopped in Crater City, suspecting Tsunade might have made a brief visit. Jirya, spotting a beautiful woman, left the others behind to pursue her. Virgil chuckled. Well, that's permissible, isn't it? Kuretsuchi blushed crimson. Why, yes, I suppose so. Virgil smirked, teasing, besides securing the hotel, anything else you'd like to do tonight? Kuretsuchi's nose bled at the double entendre, causing her to faint in embarrassment. Virgil, undeterred, carried her unconscious form to the most luxurious hotel in town. He secured 2 rooms, ensuring she was safe and not alone with strangers, or Jirya. After placing her on one bed, he sat on the other, opening an old tome he had retrieved following his confrontation with Sparta's manifestation. Sparta's memoirs. He had reached the section detailing Sparta's rebellion against Mundus and his war in Hell, but before he could continue, a knock interrupted him. Expecting Jirya, Virgil opened the door to find 2 S-rank missing ninjas. Kasame Hoshigaki and Itachi Uchiha, cloaked in Akatsuki robes. He blinked in disbelief, slamming the door repeatedly to ensure he wasn't hallucinating. After confirming reality, he muttered, "Troublesome," then addressed them. "So, what brings you 2 here?" Kasame grinned, shark-like. "Looks like the kid knows who we are, huh, Itachi?" Itachi grunted, a sound reminiscent of his sister's persona, and said, "Naruto-san, our leader wishes to speak with you." A mischievous grin crossed Virgil's face. "Sorry, Itachi-san, I must decline. One of the few lessons I learned growing up was never to follow strangers. And also, I'm not in the mood to be overwhelmed by a group of pedophiles today. So, good day." With a decisive slam, the door closed once more, leaving the 2 rogue missing nin blinking in disbelief. Kasame's eyes widened as he turned to his companion, his voice tinged with incredulity. Did he seriously just say that? Itachi's gaze sharpened, his Sharingan flaring subtly. "Kasame, break it down. We've wasted enough courtesy. It's time to apprehend him." The shark-like man's lips curled into a grin as he lifted his leg and drove it against the door with immense force. The wood splintered into countless shards, only for him to leap back just in time as a torrent of spectral swords erupted outward. Kasame's laughter rumbled deep in his chest. "Ha, the kid doesn't mess around. Got any bright ideas, Itachi? That storm of blades doesn't look like it's letting up." Itachi's brow furrowed briefly, then a subtle smirk crept onto his lips as a plan formed. "Kasame, what does Samehada sense about those blades?" The blue-skinned warrior blinked, confusion momentarily flickering across his face, until comprehension struck. He reached out, snatching one of the flying swords and holding it near Samehada. The sentient blade immediately began absorbing it, writhing hungrily. Kasame chuckled darkly. "Looks like it has quite the appetite for these things." Itachi explained the strategy. Kasame would use Samehada as a moving shield, allowing them to close the distance and seize the blonde shinobi. The ex-Giri ninja's grin widened. The plan promised a feast of potent chakra for his sword. Without hesitation, the 2 missing nins set their plan into motion. Yet as they struck at Naruto, he vanished in an instant. Itachi's frown deepened. "Damn it, a shadow clone. Where's the real one?" Kasame, scanning the area, spotted the silver-haired youth carrying Kuretsuchi, and a small boy who looked remarkably like a younger, eyeliner-free Itachi, hustling toward the forest. He called over his shoulder, urgency in his voice. "Oi, Itachi, the brat's making a run for it, and he's got 2 passengers." Itachi approached the window, eyes cold as ice. Seeing his younger sibling draped over their target's shoulder made the corners of his mouth twitch briefly in something like a smirk, though his stoicism quickly returned. In a tone as frigid as glaciers, he commanded, "Come, Kasame. We have a runner to pursue, and a foolish sibling to remind of his mission." Kasame followed, chuckling. "Still planning on forcing the brat to awaken the next stage of the Sharingan, huh? So you can claim the eternal eyes once you take his?" Itachi's smile was sharp and cold. "If he cannot meet me on equal footing, yes. If he can, I will grant him a reprieve for now. Timing is irrelevant. The eyes will be mine." Meanwhile, Virgil had only retreated to prevent the missing nin from exploiting Kuretsuchi's presence to coerce or injure him. He created 2 clones to carry the Kunoichis to safety, and moved to select a battleground to confront the legendary nin in optimal conditions. He soon discovered a wide clearing, eerily reminiscent of Training Ground 7. There, he seated himself cross-legged, blade across his lap, mentally preparing for the confrontation ahead. Jirya, on the other hand, was heading toward the hotel his companions had booked, noticing only too late that his card was missing. Under the influence of a potent genjutsu, he initially assumed the scenario was a mere scouting attempt. That illusion shattered when two Virgil clones charged at him, carrying the disguised Sasuke and Kuretsuchi. Realizing the truth, he raced forward, desperate to intervene before disaster struck. At the clearing N. Virgil remained seated, eyes closed, sensing the missing nin's arrival. His voice, cold and composed, carried across the field. "Welcome. Are you prepared to begin?" Itachi, composed after their pursuit, made one final appeal. "Naruto-san, reconsider coming with us. I personally assure you no harm will come to you if you comply." The silver-haired youth snorted dismissively. "You really think you can deceive me, Itachi? Enough words. Let our blades decide." Outside Crater City, the three combatants instinctively arranged themselves into a tense standoff, resembling a Mexican standoff. 2 against 1, the positioning favored the S-rank nin, theoretically forcing Naruto to divide his focus between them. Yet the half-devil was no ordinary shinobi. Even by the standards of his ancestors, the S-rank nin would have been considered merely average against him. His power far exceeded that of ordinary chakra users of the era. Itachi drew a standard ANBU blade, augmented with seals and improved materials over his years as a rogue ninja, capable of rivaling the 7 swords of the mist. Kasame's grin widened at the display. "So it's all kenjutsu now, eh?" Itachi's lips twitched faintly. "It would be rude not to, since both of you favor blades." Kasame's predatory smile widened, but Virgil merely raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. His expertise lay in kenjutsu, particularly the dark slayer style of his previous life. To prove his superiority, he released a fragment of his devil heritage, manifesting a red cage to trap them, allowing him the luxury of patience while they remained contained. The two missing nin, though caught off guard, quickly recovered, maintaining vigilance without lowering their guard entirely. By unspoken agreement, Kasame struck first, swinging Samehada in a powerful overhead arc. Virgil easily parried, the clash testing raw strength against unmatched speed. Itachi observed, studying their foe's technique, noting how it compensated for the lack of brute force with precision and velocity. Minutes passed without a clear advantage, until Itachi infused wind chakra into his blade, sending a storm of small slashes toward their target, intending to disable him for capture. Yet Virgil anticipated this, countering with an equal number of devil-powered blades. Capitalizing on the brief shock, Naruto maneuvered past Kasame's guard, severing his right hand and causing the sword to fall. Itachi seized the moment to strike, nearly too fast to react, though Naruto narrowly blocked it. Kasame, enraged, followed with a devastating kick, sending him 20 feet backward. Reflexively, he blocked Itachi's follow-up and parried the one-handed swing from Kasame. Despite the onslaught, Naruto avoided all attacks, choosing not to counterattack prematurely. This was his first true test, a measure of his growing power. Fighting on par with two S-rank nin, without employing his most lethal techniques, revealed a stark truth. He had yet to reach the level necessary to challenge his ultimate goals, and certainly was nowhere near confronting Mundus, his master, or the demon legions of hell. Itachi, feeling increasingly frustrated with the stalemate, decided to bend the rules. He justified it with the old adage, "If you aren't cheating, you aren't trying." Without hesitation, he unleashed Tsukunami on Naruto the first chance he got. Jirya arrived just in time to witness the confrontation. Itachi and Naruto faced each other, with tension crackling between them, while a one-handed Kasame glared at the silver-haired swordsman for removing his own hand. Jirya attempted to move closer to intervene, only to be stopped by a demonic barrier, reminiscent of ones he had encountered before. He quickly understood that the barrier could only be dissolved by the one controlling it. In Virgil's mindscape, Itachi found himself in retreat, panic fueling his escape. The reason was glaringly obvious. He had not anticipated Naruto harboring the souls of countless high-class demons. Now, every demon weapon Naruto had collected during his short stay in Tenmi, Gyuri chased him relentlessly, each one intent on ending him. Naruto, meanwhile, sat comfortably, eating a massive bowl of popcorn-flavored ramen that he had conjured mentally, watching the chaos with amusement. Hours of running wore Itachi down, and exhaustion began to creep in. Only then did he realize he was still maintaining Tsukunami and promptly deactivated it. Virgil erupted in laughter at the sight, louder than before. This was thoroughly entertaining. I'll make sure you get another chance at physical forms as a reward for this spectacle. The last image Virgil caught before returning to awareness was the demons smirking. Nevan's smile carried a subtle, unsettling edge that made him shiver involuntarily. Back in the real world, when Naruto regained consciousness, Itachi appeared completely drained from his failed assault. Kisame, too, was far from fighting at full strength. Naruto's logical mind argued for their deaths, while his demonic instincts insisted on letting them go, claiming that killing them now would be unsatisfying. A small fragment of his old self suggested sparing them so Satsuki, his female counterpart to Sasuke, could take vengeance when she grew strong enough. With a 2-to-1 vote in favor of mercy, Naruto allowed them to leave, effortlessly shattering the barrier with a thought. The two Akatsuki members fled before Jiraiya could react. Naruto grinned and said, "One of my clones, created at the start of our journey, has already located Tsunade. She's at the Golden Pig Casino and Hotel, though she's en route to one of the local sake dens. Which one exactly, I don't know, but we have confirmation she's nearby." Jiraiya chuckled as they began moving. "At this rate, you might make an excellent spy master, Naruto. But don't you feel like this is too easy?" Virgil glanced at him, responding, "Yes. Lately, it almost feels like I've become one of those overpowered characters in a cliché fanfiction." In a hidden facility, a small, nervous, gremlin-like creature wiped sweat from his brow as he scrambled from his monitoring station. "Shit, he's catching on. I need to warn the master." He ran at full speed to his master's chamber, only to be told calmly that he was overreacting. This apparently was a common occurrence in such stories. Back in the Naruto-verse, Jiraiya nodded, acknowledging Virgil's point. "Anyway, we'd better hurry before Tsunade disappears again." The silver-haired swordsman began heading toward the village, deploying hundreds of clones to locate the sake den Tsunade was approaching. Virgil and Jiraiya, followed by Kuretsuchi and a transformed Satsuki, both mildly annoyed at the swordsman, but appeased after his explanation about incapacitating Itachi and leaving him alive for Satsuki to defeat, made their way along Crater City's main road. Unlike a typical merchant district in a ninja village, this civilian city street was lined with bars, eateries, and other amenities. Within minutes, Naruto spotted two disgruntled men complaining about a blonde drunk with unnatural strength who had kicked them out of the Willow Tree Bar. Correctly deducing they referred to Tsunade, he informed his companions, and they moved swiftly toward the bar. They arrived at the bar less than 5 minutes later. Jiraiya instantly recognized Tsunade and her apprentice, both maintaining a cautious readiness typical of veteran shinobi. Virgil, however, took no chances and erected an invisible barrier keyed only to prevent Tsunade and her companion from leaving. As he listened to the conversation between the two Sannin, Virgil's irritation grew at the blonde's disrespect toward past Cage, including his own father. Despite his detachment from the Hawkage role, he respected the accomplishments of those who held the title. "Are you certain Konoha needs her as Cage, Jiraiya?" he asked. "She seems to despise the role and insults every Cage in history." Jiraiya was taken aback, about to intervene before Tsunade's legendary temper erupted. "What did you just say, brat?" Tsunade's voice thundered, shattering her sake saucer in a flash of fury. Virgil snorted, ignoring Jiraiya's frantic gestures. "Are you deaf as well as foolish? I said it's reckless to insult every Cage in the elemental nations." "That's it. Outside, brat. I'll beat you to a pulp," Tsunade roared. Virgil smiled coldly. She believed her drunken strength could overpower him, an assumption he intended to exploit. Tsunade lunged, swinging at his head, but Virgil tilted his head just enough to evade. He countered with his sheath, striking her stomach. The force, enhanced by the sheath's unique construction, sent Tsunade flying through the wall, leaving a shockingly large hole. Everyone stared at the destruction, while Virgil calmly stepped through the breach, slicing the mental remnants of the wall to make it appear as if it had collapsed naturally. Leaning against the intact section, he waited for Tsunade to regain her footing. To her credit, she recovered within a minute, a remarkable feat given the magnitude of the impact. Virgil clapped mockingly, reigniting her fury. She charged at him again, intending to decapitate him, but to Naruto, her speed was insufficient. He delivered a precise knee to her gut with just a fraction of his full strength, launching her 5 minutes away into a castle on the outskirts of town, shattering part of it. While waiting, Virgil calmly ordered water and teriyaki beef to occupy himself, while everyone else remained stunned by Tsunade's thorough defeat at the hands of an unknown swordsman. 10 minutes later, a battered Tsunade returned. Though weakened, she remained determined. She opened with a barrage of kunai, followed by shadow clones, and reinforced her defense with earth wall jutsu to gain space and counterattack. Under normal circumstances, the setup would have been the perfect stage for a high-level shinobi duel, full of strategy and skill. Yet Naruto refused to indulge in such theatrics. In a blur of motion, he obliterated the entire trench system and sent every kunai flying into nothingness with a lightning-quick draw and sheath of his blade. As the dust settled, he calmly approached Tsunade, who was desperately trying to stall him using every technique and counter she could muster, each plan crumbling effortlessly under his power. 15 minutes later, Tsunade found herself cornered, utterly drained. Between throwing countless jutsu, self-healing, and boosting her abilities, her chakra reserves had plummeted to nearly nothing. By contrast, Virgil had no intention of harming her. His aim was singular. He wanted her to acknowledge and apologize for her earlier insult. Reluctantly, and under the undeniable pressure of facing an opponent far superior to her, Tsunade complied when he asked for an apology. Once Naruto sheathed his sword, however, her temper flared, recalling that Jiraiya had introduced him as merely a semi-apprentice, someone who occasionally received guidance, corrected mistakes, or learned a trick or two. Her eyes narrowed as she addressed him. "Oi, Gaki, how about a little wager?" Jiraiya started to interject, but was silenced immediately by a sharp glance from Virgil's companion and fiancé. Raising an eyebrow at the medic, the silver-haired young man inquired, "And what do you have in mind?" A sly smile crossed Tsunade's face. "Jiraiya mentioned that he's been teaching you jutsu from time to time, right?" She paused until she saw a subtle nod from Virgil. "All right then, if you can master the Rasengan in a week, I'll return to Konoha without any fuss. If you fail, you'll hand over every last coin you own." Virgil chuckled, unimpressed. "Interesting, but I see no gain in such a wager." Her mind raced for something of equal value. Eventually, her eyes landed on her necklace. Though she believed it carried a curse, it was perhaps the only thing that could match the potential money at stake. With a hesitant voice, she said, "If you win, I'll give you my necklace. It's an heirloom of the Senju clan, worth more than any casino in Gambler's Paradise." Virgil paused thoughtfully. While wealth was not an issue for him, having collected Orochimaru's bounty and gained access to the Namikaze accounts, a treasure of such significance could serve as a meaningful gift or a strategic fallback for his clan in uncertain times. After a moment he agreed, "Very well, Tsunade-san, I accept. Jiraiya, it's time for your lesson." With that, the four shinobi departed, leaving the medics to reach their hotel unbothered, a forest outside the city. The morning after, Jiraiya lightly smacked Naruto on the back of the head, his frustration manifesting through a variation of the big head jutsu. "You fool! Why agree to Tsunade's wager? The fastest anyone has ever learned the Rasengan was 3 months." Virgil's glare was icy. "Strike me again without cause, Toad Sage, and I'll take your arm. Foolish as this bet might be for others, I have no choice but to succeed. Let's begin, Jiraiya-san, though you should assign Kuretsuchi and Satsuki something to keep them occupied." Before Jiraiya could protest, a tree exploded beside him, followed by a volley of flaming kunai narrowly missing him. Cautiously motivated, he created 2 shadow clones to assist the 2 highly dangerous kunoichi, probably not the wisest idea unless one valued their life. With his distractions in place, Jiraiya demonstrated the Rasengan to Naruto. Its outward form was deceptively simple, but upon closer inspection, Virgil realized its brilliance. The technique was both intricate and lethal, capable of being modified with elements to become a fiery grenade or a whirlwind of slicing wind. Surprisingly, the jutsu was most effective when infused with devil trigger energy. It baffled him that his human father might have devised a jutsu optimized for DT energy rather than pure chakra, possibly anticipating his future abilities. He dismissed the speculation for now, focusing entirely on the precise steps required to recreate the technique. 3 days later, Golden Crane Restaurant Naruto sat enjoying a lavish meal with his fiancée and Uchiha companion at one of the city's finest establishments. He had ordered a massive 3-pound Kobe beef steak, fried rice, and a bottle of premium Junmai Daijinjoshu. Kuretsuchi opted for a sushi platter paired with swordfish, while Satsuki chose a surf and turf combination of bluefin tuna and chicken. Between bites, they exchanged stories, recollecting favorite memories, sharing skills and hobbies. Kuretsuchi revealed her proficiency with the flute, a talent honed since childhood, while Satsuki shyly admitted to a beautiful singing voice developed in memory of her mother. Virgil's own musical talent, an ability to play guitar, inherited in part from Neven, piqued the curiosity of both women, who speculated about his potential with a shamisen. Their conversation was cut short by a commotion at the restaurant. A group of stereotypical Yakuza thugs had entered, creating chaos and attempting to extort money from the owner. Normally, they might have waited until the thugs left to recover the stolen goods, but one thug made the fatal mistake of groping Satsuki. Following strict instructions to stay seated, Virgil observed silently as Kuretsuchi and Satsuki dealt swiftly and brutally with the intruders. By the time he had finished his meal, the restaurant was left in shambles. Thugs pinned to the ceiling, others smashed into furniture, all incapacitated. Calmly, he handed the owner a sack of gold to cover the damages, a small smirk playing on his lips. As they exited, he teased lightly, "So, did you two enjoy yourselves?" Both Kunoichi flushed and playfully struck him on the shoulders. Day of the bet Virgil, accompanied by Jiraiya and his friends, walked the streets of the gambling city to meet Tsunade and demonstrate his mastery of the Rasengan. Though he had grasped the basics by the 4th day, the technique lacked power. His discovery of the weakness came accidentally after pushing himself to the point of chakra exhaustion, which sent him into a mindscape where he encountered his predecessor, gaining insights that refined the technique into its true, formidable form. The original Virgil observed with mild amusement, though he was far from surprised, that his reincarnated self had adopted the same rigorous training methods he had used in his youth. He explained to Naruto that the problem lay in trying to master too many conflicting techniques at once. Virgil could fully commit to only one combat style, either Darkslayer or ninjutsu. The other path could be partially learned, but attempting to balance both would lead to the loss of previous skills. Any new techniques acquired would overwrite what he already knew, so he had to choose wisely. After what felt like hours of deep contemplation, the young man finally resolved to abandon nearly all ninjutsu, keeping only what he had already mastered. He did, however, replace his knowledge of the Bushin Jutsu with the Rasengan, deeming it too valuable to ignore. Upon hearing his decision, the elder Virgil clarified that he would still be able to learn advanced chakra control techniques and develop variants of his existing jutsu, but acquiring entirely new abilities would require sacrificing something already known. Once past that initial hurdle, Naruto succeeded in mastering the basic Rasengan and even began work on a variant he could manipulate as freely as he could his spectral swords. Perfecting this version for combat would take much longer. The challenge was not merely forming it, but ensuring it retained its shape and powers while being deployable anywhere. As it stood, he could create the spheres within 10 meters of himself and control them up to 15, maintaining 6 simultaneously before the strain became noticeable. When the 4 shinobi reached the location where Tsunade was staying, they were immediately ambushed by 4 winged suits of armor armed with lances. From his memories of his predecessor, Naruto recognized these beings as angelos, demonic armors once used as soldiers by the Order of the Sword and later deployed by Mundus forces. Though menacing in appearance, the constructs posed little threat to trained fighters and were swiftly defeated. Entering the hotel, however, the group was met with a grisly scene. Dozens of civilians impaled by the lances of the Angelos, and Tsunade herself, furious and poised to attack a humanoid snake demon. The creature seemed vaguely familiar, but it was only when it emitted a chillingly recognizable laugh that they understood the truth. It was Orochimaru, returned from the dead. Jiraiya froze in shock at the sight of his former comrade's transformation, while the others wasted no time attacking the once pale-skinned Sannin. Death and resurrection had clearly strengthened the treacherous Orochimaru. His agility surpassed even what it had been before, allowing him to dodge attacks using the Darkslayer style at the level Naruto had currently achieved with ease. The former Sannin toyed with his opponents, demonstrating the gap between them and attempting to lure the Uchiha into joining his side. Yet the young Uchiha heiress refused, her pride in her clan outweighing any temptation. Power meant nothing if it transformed her into a monstrous abomination, incapable of reviving her people. Enraged, Orochimaru found himself suddenly bombarded by a dozen spiraling spheres of death from all directions. Despite his demonic form's enhanced healing, he was struck multiple times and lost an arm to one of the attacks. Forced to retreat, he barely escaped as Virgil collapsed, drained from sustaining such an experimental technique at such scale. While the two younger Kunoichi fussed over their exhausted friend and fiancé, Jiraiya laughed uproariously, though he soon adopted a semi-serious tone to confront Tsunade. He reminded her of the bet she had lost, including a side wager. If Naruto won in an unexpected way, she would return to Hokage. Tsunade tried to protest, claiming she had been inebriated when making the bet, but Shizun's sharp glare made it clear that any denial would bring her a world of trouble. Faced with such leverage, Tsunade reluctantly accepted. Any other choice would have been foolish. Meanwhile, 5 minutes later, Orochimaru seethed in the shadows. His chest wounds were slowly knitting closed, yet he was fully aware of how close he had come to eliminating Tsunade, a task assigned to him by Mundus to test his new abilities. His physical prowess had already surpassed his former self, and this was before he had fully mastered his altered form or honed his powers further. With time and training, he could become a truly formidable threat, precisely the kind of dangerous potential that Mundus intended to exploit for now.